wherever you are. This is Dan Denison, and Zach Ackerman and I are delighted to have you online with us today and to share an overview of our diagnostic tools. For our consulting network and our partners, we're doing a series of webcasts this year where we're going to be coming to you about once a month with an update on some of the work that we do and targeted areas so that we can get into different topics that we're working on, different challenges that we're encountering with our clients, and can build an overview of the work that we do. We'll record each of these, so these will also be online, so you can go back and pick these up at any time. But we also want to give an overview each time, but then have some time for questions and for dialogue with the people that are on our on the webcast. And if you have questions that you want to raise during the talk, just add those into chat. We'll monitor those, and then at the end of the webcast, we'll take a few minutes to jump into any of those. Okay, so let's get started. Many of you are familiar with our model and have used it in your work and know it well. This is based on the research that we did on what aspects of an organization's culture are the best predictors of the pattern of performance that organization experiences over the years. And we've done a lot of research on that. We've developed the model with this, and many of you are familiar with this. If you aren't, there's a set of videos that are on our website, and in future webcasts, we'll go over this in more detail. But fewer of you are actually aware of the range of things that we do that are connected to this model. And I wanted to make clear in this webcast, as we do an overview of our tools, what the range is. We have learned that when organizations start talking about culture, they're usually talking about three things that are going on at the same time. One is changes in the organizational system and in the environment, business environment. And so with our culture model, we assess this, and on the right-hand side of our slide here, you see very clearly the culture model and how we use that to create a profile. But we also, for a number of years, have had a Leadership 360 assessment. This is a big part of our practice. We spend lots of time coaching leaders, managers, executives in our client organizations. And so in the middle of this slide is our Leadership 360 process, the Leadership Development Survey. And that's the second tool, because when organizations are talking about culture, it usually means that there's changes in the organizational system, changes in the leadership team, and the third one that you see on the left-hand side of this model are changes in the mindset. In collaboration with Hogan assessments over these past few years, we've also developed what we call leadership potential report. That's based on the Hogan personality measures, and we use that to report the individual's leadership potential using our model and our competencies. And so we have all three of these assessments, and we use them in combination along with a number of other things that range from crowdsourcing to monitoring, additional content modules that we include. And this is the range of things that we want to review in our webcast today. So the other point I'd like to make before we get started is in all of our engagements, we use this change model. We start out with a discussion on why the culture of the organization is important to the performance of the business. We look at how an organization can best develop their culture. Then we go to the assessment stage and try to understand what the current state is. The discussion, the feedback, the results, the action planning are designed to create a common understanding of what these findings mean, and then decide some priorities for action. Out of those priorities for action, we develop an implementation plan and then follow that, track that to make sure that the changes are working the way that you want. All of these are used at the organizational level, at the leadership level, and at the personality and mindset level to try to drive action and change in the organization. So within this context, though, I want to give you an overview of our tools. And we'll start with our best known process, the organizational culture survey, and the modules that go along with that. The items, the 48 items in our survey are based on the model. They're in the language of business. They're about behaviors and values. And we use those to measure the culture of an organization and to develop a profile. It's available online and paper if needed. Paper's pretty outmoded. There's a lot of other ways, phones, kiosks, but still, if we need to go back to paper, we're well equipped to do that. 10 to 15 minutes to complete this, and we have a rich number of languages in almost everything that you can imagine. We also have developed a number of supplementary modules on engagement, commitment, trust, innovation, safety, risk, diversity, and action planning. We are currently developing modules that are in the areas of sustainability and in digitalization. So in a future webcast, you'll be able to hear about those as we're rolling this out through this coming year. We present our results in percentiles, and we tend to compare most organizations against our 1,000-person global benchmark and normative database, although we do also use a wide range of functional, industry, and regional benchmarks where needed. Our content modules, as you can see popping up here, are in 6 areas. The first 3 are engagement, measuring the relationship that organizations have with their employees have with their organization. Second one is commitment. And this is designed to be a good predictor of retention and of loyalty to the organization, the attachment, intentions to turnover. We also have a measure of trust that taps this construct in several different areas, 6 different items, and you can see one of the items here is the people in this organization have good motives and intentions. These are 3 of the modules that we've developed to complement the core 48 questions that are organized around the model. The second group here on this slide are focused on innovation, on safety, and on risk. And the innovation measure is a set of 5 items that tap the capability to successfully implement new and creative ideas. Safety is also a set of measures, a module that we use in a lot of different settings so that organizations can tell how well the culture supports the safety behaviors that are needed to keep everyone in good shape. Risk. All organizations measure risk of one sort or another. These measures were developed in consort with the financial industry companies, and as they were looking at how they manage financial risk, but it also is useful for a wide range of risk management because we're asking questions about how comfortable employees are about speaking up about risk and how well the organization is at managing and taking action to manage those risks. Our reports include the core profile, the culture profile, line items by index, high and low, and extensive segmentation of your organization by location, level, job, tenure, just different demographic characteristics, but also comparison results between locations, between business units, and descriptive statistics that we use to dig deeper into the data to help highlight key insights into the organization and the demands for change. We also do our reporting not only in terms of reports that we distribute, but also in terms of our web reporting process. So you sign on to our website, and then you can filter your data, compare your data, do your own comparison charts, export those, and look at the different kinds of cuts and segments of the data that you want. In any way you want, at any time that you want. We continue to work on developing web reporting capabilities so that all of our clients have access to their results anytime that they want, but that we still, of course, hold on to the data and protect the confidentiality of responses. So our web reporting tool is a way for clients to get quick and easy access to their own results anytime that they want. We use a culture benchmark of about 1,000 organizations. There's about 500,000 people in that database. It's stable across years, and we update it regularly. It's got very broad geographic and industry representation. About 35% of the organizations in the database are headquartered outside of the United States, and about 40% of the respondents were located outside the United States. We usually start the discussion on the benchmarking process with the global benchmark. That's the most robust and most stable. We do provide benchmarks by industry, by geography, and sometimes these are helpful, and we use that to supplement the global benchmark. In practice, what we found is they don't differ too much, and that the strongest benchmark and we think the best comparison is to use the global benchmark, and so that's what we start with in most of our projects. But we're always glad to understand the need for custom benchmarking and incorporate that into projects where we need to. This next part that's in your presentation and able to look back to, if you like, is a sample report that gives an overview of the 14,000 people that were in this corporation and gives the overall profile. We then go about segmenting this data in any way that is necessary to help support the action planning process. But you can see here that, you know, more color is better on the profiles, that a higher percentile score means that you scored more highly in relationship to the global benchmark. So a 31 means that this company on the coordination and integration index scored at the 31st percentile compared to the 1,000 companies in the global benchmark. So, you know, most are higher than they are on coordination and integration, but on learning and in goals and objectives and empowerment and agreement, they're quite a bit higher. They're up into the 70s. This report includes all of the questions and the benchmark score for each one of the items that helps you understand the pattern in the culture, and also to, you know, compare across the different indexes and measures. And looking through the data in some detail, including the highest scores and the lowest scores, are the way that we support the process of understanding what the results are telling us about the organization. And so I noticed a few people have joined us since we started, and so I did want to give you a reminder that if you have questions as we're going along, please, you know, use the chat box, and we'll track those throughout the presentation, and then we'll come to those questions at the end. So thanks very much for joining us. We also do extensive driver analysis in nearly all of our projects now, where we're trying to understand the specific culture, behaviors, values, and practices that are the strongest drivers of a particular outcome of interest. This may be a performance measure, a KPI. This may be one of the content modules where we're trying to understand, as this upcoming example shows, what aspects of the culture are the best predictors of the content module, in this case of engagement. So the five strongest drivers of engagement in this study are shown in the middle of the chart. They're the unique culture drivers, capabilities of people, the bench strength, the perception that there's a strong culture, the use of teamwork, decisions being made at a level where best information is available. These are the strongest predictors of the engagement score. And so we track individual employee engagement, but we also link that characteristics of the work environment that we call culture, because those are most often the strongest predictors of engagement and the strongest predictors of the different things that we are measuring in our modules. So another key tool that we use is a text analytics tool. There's no as the quote says, there's no substitute for reading comments, as the slide says. But when we're doing projects that have tens of thousands of comments, reading all of those, categorizing them can take a long time. And so we've developed a number of tools to help with that process. So this will categorize a set of open-ended comments and will identify key themes such as you see in this chart. And that allows us to kind of highlight the topics that are mentioned by employees, by members of the organization most frequently, and to see how often they're mentioned. But then this is a categorization of 622 comments, which you can read 622 comments, but that's a fairly large set of comments, so we find it helpful to group these and categorize them, because then you can click in and out to get the comments that fit into each one of these categories. So that's essentially kind of an aid to organize the different comments so they're easier for you or your client organizations to read through, to pick those comments that really hit the mark, because so often we're complementing the quantitative results that we present in terms of the model with those key quotes and insights that best bring those results to life. So that's a little bit of an overview of our text analytics tool. We also get into more advanced analytics, whether we're looking at change over time, demographic cuts, linkage analysis, connecting the culture measures to a set of performance measures. All of these different approaches here are areas where we dig in more deeply to the results. We do a custom set of analysis on the items to try to find the answer, the depth to more detailed questions. For example, several organizations that we've worked with have been concerned about the gender gap in engagement in their organization. And so in this case, in this kind of cases, we dig in more deeply by location, by seniority, by job, by level, by experience, to see if the gap between men and women with respect to engagement varies a lot by location. And in almost all of the projects that we've done with this, that's been the real insight, is how much this varies by location. And that we've also found that even in the context of an organization where overall the engagement gap took the form of women having lower engagement scores than men, but there were also parts of the organization, levels, positions, throughout the organization where it was actually the other way around. In specific, there were countries where women's engagement was higher than men. Um, and the variation between locations within country was also really, really insightful here, because it's not just national culture that determines the gap between men and women with respect to engagement. It's also leadership at the local level, and the way that they are inclusive with both men and women, with people of all types, that are creating an environment where engagement's a much more positive level. So this set of analytic services usually takes shape around a specific problem that client's trying to understand, and we use our R&D team to dig in and do a custom set of analyses in great detail. With one of our organizations, we did an extensive analysis of their experience with telework, and how that was influenced by and how that could influence the culture of units within their organization. So this is a rich and expanding set of services that we use in many of our projects. We also spend a lot of time with different clients tracking their progress over time, because the issue isn't just about doing a survey and about reporting the results. It's about tracking the action. It's about tracking the change over time. And so we've developed several tools to help us do this. The first one we call a change monitor. A lot of times in a culture project, as we go through the honest conversations, trying to see the priorities for action and defining some areas for action, we find that there's 2 or 3 specific areas that really need some work. So we create a short survey of 2 to 3 indexes, 8 to 10 questions that measure specifically in these areas. And sometimes we even use a sample so that it's a lighter, smaller, faster project. But here we might go back to the organization 3 to 6 months after the survey process to do a change monitor to track and see if the changes are starting to take root. And it always creates an interesting dialogue, because some people are saying, well, we won't have had time to make those changes yet. But the counter to that is, yeah, but why wait a year or 2 to find out nothing has happened? Get some feedback on the implementation process on your action plans, and you're bound to improve those. We also use a Pulse platform. We've had a partnership for 3 or 4 years now with the San Francisco-based company Waggl, and we also use this to get continuous feedback through a Pulse platform. And this can be for specific groups or specific parts of the organization. And this is a Pulse process that an organization can use as frequently as they like with whatever kind of topic they want. So for example, if in your division you were making some changes designed to increase customer focus, you could ask, what are the things that could be done to improve customer focus? And people can rank and prioritize those and help build some consensus. You can also say, what do you think of the 4 different initiatives that we've undertaken to increase customer focus? Have you personally been involved with those? Do those affect your work? What are the things that you can do? Waggl is a great Pulse platform that has a lot of flexibility that we also use to track action and to keep track of what's going on in an organization, and of all of the attempts that are going on to try to change and transform the culture. That is a quick overview, and today we've only got 45 minutes, so I want to move on to the other tools. But we will, in our upcoming webcasts, we plan on doing 1 a month, come back to each of these topics in more detail, and other more specific topics too. Today is kind of the rapid overview, the helicopter view, the big picture of the range of measures that we use, the range of tools, and how we can put those into action. Quite soon after we developed our original culture model, we also responded to client demand and insight to create a leadership development 360 that we call the Denison Leadership Development Survey. This uses the same model as our culture assessment, but it defines the elements in the model and defines the questions, in terms of the leadership competencies and the specific capabilities of a leader. So it's not, does the organization have a shared vision? It's, does the leader who's being assessed with this method really know how to create a shared vision? And are they doing that with their people, with their team, with their direct reports, with their peers, and with their boss? This 360, like many, is a contrast between self-perceptions and the perceptions of others. So you can see here, interesting discussion, you can bet, with this leader, their self-perceptions on promotes organizational learning, that's a first percentile score. But their peers, their direct reports, their boss, and others rated them much, much higher, an 86. So clearly they're underestimating some of the key capabilities that they have. And so this contrast between the self and the other is the core of our Leadership 360. And we also, are looking at peer results, direct report results, the boss's perceptions, and the perceptions of others. These results are also benchmarked. We compare to about 15,000 leaders in our benchmark database, and self-scores are compared to self-scores, direct report to direct report, and so on. This has a wide range of industry, geographic, and also level. The benchmarks are quite stable across years. And they're updated regularly, most recently in 2018. And this benchmark process is the same as the culture survey. The results from Leadership 360 produce a lot of useful data. This is a sample page for a human resource executive on all of the items in the consistency area. So you can see, even though there's a lot of numbers and scores on the page, that more color is better, and that a higher percentile score is a more positive condition. So just looking at this, you can see, the second item, practices what he or she preaches. Well, the boss thinks that's an 84. The direct reports think it's a 3. And on average, for the combined other, it's an 8th percentile score, which means it's one of the 10 lowest items in the survey of the 96 items. And so that's highlighted by a minus sign next to each of those items. So this level of feedback comes through on all of the 96 items in the survey for the peers, direct reports, boss, combined other, and any other segment that you want to include, in addition to the self scores that the individual manager generates. So that's a little bit of an overview of the Leadership 360. And here you see the contrast between the highest scores and the lowest scores. The lowest score does the right thing even when it's not popular. Highest score communicates the organization vision to his or her employees. So you get a feel quite quickly for this individual manager's strengths and their challenges. I also want to give a quick overview of the Leadership Potential report that is based on the Hogan assessment process. And this produces a report that is available for anyone who's used the Hogan assessments. If Hogan has your data, all you need to do is push the button and that'll produce a summary of that data in terms of the competencies in our model. And it's a great tool for understanding what drives a leader's potential. It also, in leadership development efforts, can often be a good place to start, because a full-blown 360 or an assessment of your organization can go a lot deeper. We feel it's more powerful, but sometimes a self-assessment of the individual's core personality traits and an understanding of how those influence their capabilities in terms of our model can also be a useful place to start the coaching process, to start the leadership development process. We aligned the competencies to the Hogan model, worked with the Hogan team and their research archive to characterize how their measures fit with our competencies, and then created a profile to best predict each competency. And then we calibrated those profiles based on a global managerial sample. We did this about 5 years ago to develop this tool. It uses all 3 Hogan assessments, the HPI, the MDPI, and the HDS, that track on the inside, the bright side, and the dark side, as well as personal goals, interests, and drivers. So using that collection of measures, and here you see a summary of the HPI measures on adjustment, ambition, sociability, interpersonal sensitivity, prudence, inquisitiveness, and a learning approach, that those are used as the base for making a judgment that we then tested on an extensive sample to help predict their competencies in terms of our model. We also, of course, use the dark side that are a set of personality-based derailers that can limit career potential. And then finally, the inside. These are items that measure core values, goals, and interests, key factors in driving your career. So this creates a potential report. So you can see a profile for a leader. And then as you can see in this example, we use the band, the orange box, to define an acceptable range, i.e. in the window with respect to this basic personality trait to deliver with respect to the competency in our model. So this is a competency on emphasizing customer focus. And the window in the orange box there shows that you don't need to have highest scores in sociability, but you certainly can't have too low scores. So level of sociability is required to perform this. And so what we see for this individual is that their sociability scores are quite good, 73rd percentile, and that fits well within the window. Prudence. This one's interesting because the individual in question is well outside the window. The judgment through going through the Hogan archives and doing the comparison research was that you needed a pretty strong degree of prudence to ensure the follow-through with customers, because it's not just making the promise, it's delivering on it. And that this particular individual had quite low scores on that scale. That meant that they were, maybe not as prudent as they needed to be to follow through on customer focus and on customer requests. So that's the way that these are interpreted. And as you can see, there's a summary of all of the scores on the Hogan measures that then is also explained in terms of our model to produce an overall profile for a leader, such as the one that you see here. Okay, that's a pretty quick tour through a wide range of assessments. And so we've still got 5 or 10 minutes here left. So we can take some questions that have been coming in through the discussion. Question, Bert asked, how does the beliefs and assumptions in the center of the profile relate to items such as vision, mission, and so on? Thanks, Bert, for raising the question, because beliefs and assumptions are in the center of the model. The measures are about behaviors and values because you can measure those. It's very difficult, we've found, to be able to measure core beliefs and assumptions. They tend to be real specific to the situation. They're best understood in kind of a clinical setting where you really have some qualitative understanding of the history of the organization, individuals' perceptions, and are really able to go much, much deeper. In a lot of ways, that fuzzy gray ball, beliefs and assumptions in the center of the model, is acknowledgement of the fact that each organization's history and their key assumptions and beliefs are very unique. And there's a limit to how much we can just capture those through the set of survey questions. So it's an acknowledgement of the need to go deeper. Now, to your other question of, well, how does this compare to vision and also to core values? The one thing behaviorally that you can measure is the perception about whether or not there are a set of core values. How strong are they? How widely held are they? The whole issue of what are they and how do they link to the organization's history and to their readiness for performance. We believe that's a deeper kind of discussion, but core values can flag areas where there is a lack of consensus, where there aren't any core values, or where an organization has stated core values, but they don't have much impact. They don't have teeth. They don't have many consequences. And a similar point with respect to mission and purpose. It's not about what is the purpose, or did you get the right purpose? It's about, is the purpose well understood across the organization? Is it motivating? Does it help people align? And so the mission and core values are just a statement of whether or not those exist. And the center of the model reminds us that we always need to go deeper to understand the history and tradition. If you are, the next question is about the DLPR and the Hogan certification. If you're already certified in Hogan, it helps to be certified in our method. And we have a certification workshop that Zach will tell you about here as we close up, that's coming up in May, and we usually do those every couple of months. If you are certified in Hogan and not able to do a workshop on a timely basis, give us a call. We'd be glad to support you with that. We'd be glad to help you interpret your first couple of examples. We're glad to help you through that. It is a big help to be certified in Hogan to debrief the DLPR. It's not strictly required, but it's highly recommended. And it's a good investment of your time anyway to understand that foundation. Okay, maybe we've got time for one more question.
Hey folks, this is Zach Ackerman, Director of Business Development for the domestic United States. I wanted to speak to the last question from Gene about the ability to buy a DLPR for someone who completed the Hogan LFS. You are able to buy the DLPR as long as any leader has taken all three of the Hogan Personality Inventory, the Hogan Development Survey, the Motives, Values, Preferences Inventory. And because the Leadership Forecast series includes those three, so long as you can get us a leader's name, the organization name, and the Hogan ID, which appears on the front page of each of those three reports, we're able to coordinate getting that report for you. The price is $295. And we already have the data so that we can really turn it around very quickly, usually just one business day. And I'm happy to distribute my contact information to help facilitate that. In close, there was questions around the Denison certification. So I just want to let folks know about a few really exciting opportunities. The first and probably most effective is our in-house certification workshop coming up on May 14th and 15th. It's around the corner from our Denison headquarters in Ann Arbor, Michigan, the home of the University of Michigan. It'll be facilitated by Dr. Dan Denison, who you spoke with today, as well as several of our senior consultants who will help you really understand the roots of our research, understand how to take data and drive action using real cases and real data from our client organizations, as well as the links between culture and leadership and how the tools can be used in synthesis to really drive meaningful change and lasting change in an organization. It's 2 days in a welcoming, very interactive environment. If you're not able to join us on May 14th and 15th, we also have opportunities virtually where we pair you up one-on-one with one of our senior consultants, and they'll actually spend 8 hours with you, scheduled at your mutual convenience, in which they'll dive into that same content in a virtual capacity. There's no replacing in-person classroom learning. The research shows that, but we have virtual options as well. And we'll be sure to distribute those opportunities as follow-up as well.
Okay, we're glad you could join us today, and we went through an extensive overview of a wide range of things, and the in-depth discussion of the many different projects, offerings, and approaches that we take will be coming at you here in our monthly webcasts throughout this coming year. If you have reactions or you have thoughts about what you'd like to hear more about and what you'd like us to include in the topics for some of our upcoming webcasts, please be in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you. We're doing these webcasts to keep in close touch with you and be as responsive to you and your interests and your clients' interests as we can. So thanks so much for joining us today. Thanks, Zach, for all your work putting this together, and we hope we see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.